All right, so we're here with Jay Smith and his wife, Kat Smith. Jay was a police officer, DARE officer, QRT up in PA, works for Coast RTA now, so he's had quite a few hats. And Kat's been an educator since they started educating people, as far as I know. Just kidding, guys. 36 years. So we're going to get to hear a little bit about what it was like being on the education side and having a spouse who was in law enforcement, and vice versa, and how you guys kind of dealt with that, some of the experiences, and a little bit more about yourself. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, whoever wants to go first. Ladies first.
Okay. Yes, I've been in education for 36 years, so it's just ingrained in me. It's a part of me in various roles, and I also teach yoga. So there's that like calming
That's cool.
Side too. I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
That's very cool. Jay?
So my name is Jay Smith. Like you said, I have been in law enforcement I was in law enforcement for over 30 years. Started out with a sheriff's department in Pennsylvania as a deputy, and from there went to the police academy at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Got out, got my first job in Ridgeway Borough, Pennsylvania, small town, before I got hired on by Newberry Township Police, which is in York County, Pennsylvania, South Central PA, just about an hour or so north of the city of Baltimore, across the PA line, and worked there for the better part of 25 years before I retired and came down here to Myrtle Beach to be retired, and then went back to work for Horry County Police Department for another 3.5 years before I got my current job, which is a safety director for Coast RTA, which is a public transit company. But my time in my police department in Pennsylvania, we did everything on our own. There wasn't a lot of support as far as if you went to a call and it was a homicide scene, that was your scene, and you had to play it through until you got an investigator or somebody to come out and help you out. You had to take care of all that stuff. So I was involved in everything from patrol. I was a patrol supervisor, a sergeant for about 9 years. Had a canine for 6 years, which was probably the coolest thing I did in all my tenure as a police officer. But I was also on our QRT team, which is called Quick Response Team, kind of like a SWAT team would be from another jurisdiction. And I was a hostage negotiator for 10 years with that team as well. So I did a little bit of everything. Drug detective for 4 years on a team, for a county team as well.
So you're a little bit of a jack of all trades?
Yes, jack of all trade, master in none. But I faked my way through it.
Fake it till you make it, right?
That's right.
Cool. So I want to touch on, Kat, what you do, because you've been in education. So you've seen the development in police response from what it was when you started to what it is now for, school situations. So what is just your take on how it's developed? Do you think it needs to get better? You can keep it generalized. You don't have to get into specifics, but being that your husband was in law enforcement and kind of seeing both sides of that coin, what do you think? Do you think we're missing the mark here, as people?
I think it's come a very long way as far as our prevention strategies and our deterrent of dangers in the school. School security, I always say, is our #1 priority. Keeping everyone safe, physically safe and emotionally safe. When I first started in education, there was no police presence at all in the school unless there was an incident. The only time we saw any first responders was when we had a fire drill, and they would come to the school. This is back in 1989 when I first began as a teacher. Now as an administrator, I'm involved in the safety and security in the school behind the scenes, and we do an amazing job, especially in Horry County, of keeping our schools safe. We're fortunate to have an SRO and armed security and unarmed security in our building. Our students all go through, and every visitor on campus goes through our front gate system. So we have weapons detection, then we have metal detectors that they go through, and we just do an excellent job. Our buildings are constructed. I've seen a huge shift from multiple entrances and things that would allow not secure premises, not even. When I first started, we didn't even wear badges.
Oh, wow. So you didn't identify.
A long time ago.
Okay.
A very long time ago.
Yeah.
When I first met Jay, we had police presence who came in and just did walkthroughs of the schools. He was also a DARE officer at the school where I taught, so that's how we actually met.
And you really liked him when you met?
I did not like him. I thought he was very And it may have been my impression of police officers. It may have been just something that I had in my mind. He was just very quiet, he came in and he was there for a reason. He was walking the halls and just checking out the building and walked by and he said hello, but that was it. And I just had an impression that he was kind of stuck up. I don't know where that came from. And
I wasn't.
He's just trying to say hi.
That's right.
it was just kind of a funny story, but I've seen a huge shift, and I feel extremely safe.
So what do you, as an administrator, do you bring anything to the school with you? I know you can't have weapons or anything, but like anything that helps you feel like you can do more should a situation arise?
I mean, in my office, and very accessible to anyone who could need it, we have a Stop the Bleed kit. We have first aid kits. We have an AED on campus. We have a team of people trained in first response, and everyone has a specific role. So I think we do an excellent job of just being prepared.
I think that that's way better than even when I was a kid growing up. I mean, we had a first aid kit at the nurses station, right? So I think that that's important. That's great. Do they offer like a lot of training for educators now?
We have a lot of training opportunities, and everyone has a little mini go bag kind of thing that we even, grab for fire drills and things like that. So I think there's definitely a huge awareness and a lot of things being done continually to improve our measures.
That's important, especially I have young kids, so I think that that's really good to hear, because we have issues in the county that have risen in the last few months that are like concerning, but it's good to know that like there's something being done that makes our kids safer. Because I think there's a lot of places where people aren't either knowing this, that it's happening behind the scenes, or that maybe something's not being done that needs to be done. So I think that that's really good, especially for where we are. I mean, we are in the South, right? I know, growing up in New York, even people would bring in high school their hunting guns in their trucks. So now it used to be that way a while ago here, not too long ago, where people would, go hunting after school, and now they've gone away and done away with that. So I think that's cool. That's very good. What are your thoughts, Jay? You think it's getting better, worse?
We've come a long way. I mean, I think we learned a lot of lessons from Columbine, obviously, and the tactics that law enforcement uses in an active shooter situation. That's the buzzword nowadays, and everybody's worried about active shooters. We see them a lot, unfortunately, but Columbine taught us some really good lessons. There have been some failures across the country over the years, even since then, but prior to Columbine, it was wait, try to negotiate with who was ever inside, try to establish some communications, and wait it out. And we learned that you can't do that. You have lives, you have children's lives, you have teachers' lives at stake. So, we know that if we go and we hear the gunfire, we're going to the gunfire. And you're going to take that team of guys in, and you're going to just overlook whatever else is going on. You're going to get to that subject and neutralize the subject. And I think that's important. I mean, we do live in a society where unfortunately these things happen, and not only in schools, but in workplaces, movie theaters, churches, wherever. So we have to be prepared. I do like the fact that her school has both police officer and armed security together working in tandem. Not every school has that across the country. And I think that it's something that people should look at. I think school districts should really work closely with their police departments and try to get SROs into all the schools just to have that presence there, for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
Do you think that SROs should receive like a higher standard of training than like your typical patrol officer might?
I think that I think the only training that they might need in addition to their normal police training, because they still have to go through all that, would be just how to deal and how to react with kids, large groups of kids, and be able to interact with them well. Because obviously, yourself, some people are better than other people dealing with. Some people don't like dealing with adults. Some people don't like dealing with children. So I want to make sure that my SRO is good with the kids, and the kids respect, get along with them, and appreciate the fact that they're there. So that's the biggest thing for me. It'd be to let them, have them trained or have them understand what's important as far as the education part of it too, and how the teachers feel and how the students feel about them being there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that especially deals with like a base level of like the general public, because like you grow and you develop these biases over time. Kids being able to interact with an RSO who's got, a professional way of dealing with it, but also building a mutual respect for, officers as a whole. Because I think that that's going to trickle down over time. So I think that that's important too.
Yeah, I think a lot of the general public has misconceptions about police officers and what they're there for and what they want to do as compared to what they have to do sometimes. I think that having them in the school, letting the kids see that they're a real person too.
Yeah.
They have families, they have kids of their own, and getting to know them on a different level than they would if that officer was coming to their house for some kind of call or to, wherever they might be because something went down or something happened. They see them on a different level. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think because as cops, we show up normally on the worst day of somebody's life.
Correct.
So you're going to get that guy who's there to deal with that versus the guy who's like, yeah, I'll go to the play basketball with you guys for a little bit. I'll have lunch with you, right? Because that's a completely different guy. Because when we're cops, like we put on so many faces, right?
Yeah.
There's the go to the hot call with the DV. There's we got to do a traffic stop. Then there's somebody just had like a crappy day, fell down and broke their leg, and just needs somebody to hang out with them while the ambulance comes. So we're just like completely different.
Yeah, I mean, we're there to do a lot of jobs. You think about it, we're counselors, we're social workers, we help parent. We give advice to people that are having whatever the problem might be in that day. They just might call 911 because they don't have any other outlets.
Right.
So you end up getting there, and before you know it, you're counseling somebody. You're not there to arrest anybody. You're not there to cause any kind of problems. You're just there to try to give some advice and get them through a situation that they don't know how to get through themselves.
Yeah.
And 911 is free.
That's true.
I've been to calls at 3:00 in the morning where unknown situation, and you get there, you don't know what's going on. And I had an old lady come to the door and tell me her hot water tank exploded, and she didn't know how to get the water turned off, and she wasn't calling a plumber because it was too expensive. So me and my partner found her main shutoff and shut off her water to the house and said, you're gonna have to get a hold of a plumber tomorrow. But she knew if I call 911, I'll get the police here. They can at least maybe help me.
Yeah.
So there are those funny times where you do things you're not expected to do, but you still do them to try to help somebody out, and they remember it.
Right. I think that a lot of that gets lost because of I'm struggling with words here, but the media overhyping, what it is cops do. Right?
Yeah,
it's never like that guy who had to be a plumber, right? Like,
right.
You're not going to hear about that in the media.
I've removed snakes from people's houses and got in their cupboard and didn't know who to call. They called 911. But I think one of the biggest things is people don't view they only view law enforcement as somebody's going to come here because somebody's going to jail or somebody's going to get beat up. Something's going to happen bad. They don't realize that 99% of the time, that's not the case at all. Very, very minimal percentage of time do we make a physical arrest and carry somebody off and take them to jail. A lot of times we're there for all these other reasons we're talking about. And I think that's important for people to understand that we aren't there just to create more grief for them. We're there to try to help them with whatever the problem may be.
Right. And I think it falls on us, to be like the person who, maybe we don't want to take this person to jail, but because the situation is kind of ridiculous, but it falls on us to have to do it versus like us getting to a situation where it's maybe two roommates having an argument. And it's like, let's just everybody sit down for a second. Let's have a conversation. Stop yelling at each other. Stop throwing food. Right. Mm-hmm. And people don't realize that it falls on us to be able to adjust and pivot to that situation and try to make the best of each one.
And also, you think about how many law enforcement officers are in the country. I'm going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 375, 400,000 law enforcement officers across the country. And the media sensationalizes the bad things.
That's the word I was going for.
and there's millions of calls happening across the country every day that officers are handling appropriately and taking care of what they need to take care of. But we only see the negative aspects in the national media. So people have to understand that even in Horry County, between the county police department, the city police departments that have their own, there's hundreds of thousands of calls being answered every year that are being taken care of in the way they have to be taken care of. And I think most people don't realize that. They just see like, oh, something bad happened or this officer did this or that. But it's such a small percentage of the actual everyday things that are happening that are negative. The vast majority of law enforcement officers across the country are doing the job and doing it right and fighting the good fight every day.
Right. Because we're deployed, 365 days a year almost.
Correct. There's no days off.
Right. I can't remember his name, but he was on a separate podcast with Sean Ryan. But he was a cop in North Carolina, and he was saying, like the Tier 1 Navy SEALs, they get to go, spin up, get deployed to Yemen, wherever it is, finish their mission, come home, wash our hands of it. Us, it's, we get up, put on our uniform, we're deployed. We get home, we go to sleep, we get back up, and we go right back. And most of us wind up working where we live. Like especially here in Horry County, like I don't know too many people who live in Horry County that go and work in, Lancaster. That'd be ridiculous.
Right.
Right. So like for us, it's, we have to, maybe we arrested somebody, one day and then a month later we go to Walmart and that person's there. So we're constantly dealing with it, whether we're in uniform or not.
And we have to do that with our families present sometimes.
Yes.
They know you now. They see your spouse, your children, and they may not like you. And so yeah, we have to constantly be concerned with what's going on around us and who's around us at all times.
Yeah, I think a lot of that also gets lost.
It does.
That the public doesn't realize. And I mean, like you've had him come home with good experiences and bad. So why don't you share like some of the experiences that you like made you go, wow, I didn't know you did that. Like, that's really cool. You're such a good dude for doing that.
I remember some of the stories that he already shared about just helping people, on the most, and he would always say the smallest call may be to most people, why did they call you? Why did you need to go respond to that? Why was that even a call? But to that person, it was the most important thing. Seriously, the cat, there was a lady with a cat that got out, a cat was stuck in the tree, and that's kind of a classic, right? Cat in the tree.
Yeah.
But to her, that was the last living thing. Her husband had died. That was her world, that cat. So there were a lot of things that he did. He's delivered babies, 2 babies, right?
2, yeah.
And those were pretty incredible. You just never know when you're going to whatever call. He's also disarmed, a man went into a trailer and disarmed someone with a partner before the team got there and totally diffused a situation. He got a Medal of Valor for that.
That was a Christmas night call in a different jurisdiction who only had 1 officer working. And, this guy was barricaded, he came out with it, he had a rifle, his wife ran out of the house. And she called 911, says he has a rifle, he's threatening to kill me. And, we called for a QRT call out, but prior to them arriving, we decided that, we had to do something because of just how he was. And we took 3 officers. I took a shield out front, had 2 officers back me up from behind. We just went through the house and, got to the back bedroom where he was located and basically just bum rushed him with the shield, got him down on the ground and took him into custody without any further incident. But, that was a come to Jesus moment. When you're going into a location where somebody has a weapon and they've already threatened somebody and you can't wait, for a huge call out for a team to come out and deal with it, it rocks you. It really does. And people don't think about those things. The average citizen, now the folks that lived around him, they all knew about it. And like she said, I got awarded a medal for that from the agency that I was helping and also from my own agency. But, we all know that we don't do it for those kind of reasons. It's not,
No.
You don't get into law enforcement to make money.
No.
I can tell you time and time again, I've told her, I picked the wrong career if I wanted to become rich and have whatever I wanted to have, because it doesn't work that way.
No, not at all.
So that's why I'm still working after all these years. But there's a lot of calls and instances of things that have transpired that you wouldn't think that are law enforcement related, but you end up dealing with them.
Yeah.
So you just do it. People call and you have to go.
We're there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you share with me maybe like I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe one of the experiences that's stuck with you that maybe helped change you as a person, for good, for worse, whatever you pick.
Yeah, well, there's a few that have changed me for different reasons. And I can tell you that as a new police officer, you come into the job and you're not really sure what to do. The academy doesn't train you for the road. They give you some basics, but they don't train you for what really happens.
Yeah, the crisis house is not real life.
Yeah, so when you first start, I came into it and I was really concerned about everybody. Like, I wanted everything to be okay. I wanted people to be okay. I didn't want to see people hurt and this and that. And so an FTO program, or a field training officer program, is what you go through with a senior officer. And I got to do that for like the first 30 days. I was on my first job. And after that, you were on your own. That very first day I was on my own. I'm driving on a rural road, just patrolling, not doing anything, trying to mind my own business and stay out of trouble. And I see headlights flashing on a car ahead of me, up on the road ahead of me, and a lady's waving her arms in the middle of the road, and I'm like, what does this lady want? And I get up there, I thought maybe she hit a deer or something because it was a rural area.
Yeah.
And I get there, and there's a small boy laying in the middle of the road with his head split wide open. She hit him with his car. He and another little friend were playing a game they created called Switch, where they would hide behind a guardrail and try to run across the road and beat cars coming the other direction. And he didn't make it.
Oh my God.
And I got out, and I was about ready to try to do CPR. And there was no CPR that could have been done. Luckily, a registered nurse pulled up right behind me, and she's like, listen, you can't do anything. But I was calling I wanted everybody. I wanted the Marine Corps. I wanted helicopters. I wanted everybody to get there to help me. And that rocked me for a long time. Like every time I drove down that road, I would see that little boy laying there, and it would upset me. And, she knows how much that upset me. And then over time, after you're in the job for a little bit, you realize I can't do this. I can't take every one of these situations home with me because it'll eat you up.
Yep.
And you won't be able to make it through your career. So then you go through this long phase where you become callous and sort of cold to incidents. And I've had people die in my arms. I've, been to all kinds of places where I've had to tell people their loved ones were killed in the middle of the night, this and that. And you just, go from there to time to go to dinner. It's time to eat now, and you just keep going on throughout your day. And I went through that period for a long phase in my career. And then as I got older, I sort of meandered back to the beginning. And I think it's because I realized my own mortality. And I realized I had more good days behind me than I do ahead. And I started getting to the point where I was like, I went to an accident scene where a man was ejected through the sunroof of his SUV. And he was laying in the middle of the road, and he was on his last breath, basically. But his wife was there, and she was fine. She had her seatbelt on, airbag, nothing. And she was begging me to do something for him, just begging. And there was nothing I could do. And after that, I think I went home and I told her, I said, I think I'm done soon. I said, I can't keep, I'm getting to the point now where everything's bothering me again. And so there are instances that make you feel good. There are instances that make you feel bad. We had an officer in my department that was shot at a domestic scene and was pinned down behind a shed. And we got there. I was off duty. They called me at home. Luckily, I lived only a couple miles away. Grabbed some gear, went right to the scene, and we were able to drive a car up the driveway. I used a rifle to just keep the person at bay in the house. And as my partner drove, we grabbed him, threw him in the back of the patrol car, and got him down to an ambulance. Thank God he was okay. But afterwards, you're like, man, that was all. I did something great for somebody.
Yeah.
Not only was it a human being that I helped, but it was one of my friends that I helped.
One of your brothers.
So and those things lift you up. Other instances, other issues that happen can drag you down a little bit, and you got to try to play it out. You have to try to figure it out so that you can get through that whole, whatever it is, 20 years, 25 years, 30-year career, or it will eat you up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know. I dealt with that. And two of those calls that you just mentioned, the kid and the ejection, those have sat with me, and I've learned to process way through it.
Yep.
But that's the stuff that it's hard to take home, and it's hard to. A lot of people don't realize that's kind of shit that we carry with us, whether we get over it or not.
Yes, sir.
We're going to take it with us.
Yeah. And I had really good support from her. A lot of officers don't take the job home, and they don't take home life to the job. And for me personally, and when her and I discussed things, she always wanted to know if something happened, talk to me. Let me know what transpired so we can work it out together if there's a problem. And I had a great support system with her, and I think that really helped me to get through a lot of things and to be able to make it through the whole almost 30 years without having any major, issues of my own. Some people say I have issues, but they might be from something else. I don't know. But she
Living in an HOA will do that to you.
Yeah, she helped me out tremendously.
Yeah, that's good. You feel like you were a good support system for it. I mean, clearly.
I wanted to know what I was always interested in his career. There's something about the Thin Blue Line family that really is. I've worked at a lot of places, and the people who I work with on a daily basis in education have always been a family. But there's something about the Blue family that transcends. It doesn't matter. It's not just the people you know. It's the people you make a connection. You know, we were both police officers. We both served. And there's a true bond and a true love and support among one another, which has been great. But I've always felt, and so have my friends, you know, educators and police too.
They somehow go together really well, or like educators or police and other first responders or nurses and for whatever reason, there's a bond there it's indescribable, really.
I think we all face similar situations, and you know, we see, if you work in a hospital or if you work in an ER or a trauma center or something, you see, you know, firsthand what happens to people as a result of something bad. So they understand what we're dealing with out there, and we understand what they're dealing with and what they have to see afterwards in the aftermath, and the family members coming and people screaming, you know, whatever's going on. And I think educators understand that too, because you know, they don't deal with just kids and books and grades and tests. They deal with their families and events that are happening in their lives too, that they have to take care of. So they understand us and we understand them. She has a very difficult job where she works, and you know, she puts in long hours every day. Sometimes we don't see each other until late at night, and she went through that with me when I was working. So there was times I wouldn't be home, and heck, we had one SWAT call out that I think was like 19 hours that I was gone.
Holy cow.
And that was after driving home from South Dakota for 22 and a half hours straight, and had like about 1 hour to relax before we got the call out. So I went right there. So I was up for like 2 days straight, but you know, we just had to do those things.
Was there enough caffeine to get through it?
There was. And Lunchables.
Lunchables and caffeine. Yeah. For anybody who doesn't know, that's really how you get through it. That or Uncrustables. Uncrustables will get you there. Yeah. So what would you tell like spouses of, you know, law enforcement or even military, you know, like how can they understand better or be more of a support system to their spouse?
I think communicate. Communication is the key to any, you know, good relationship, healthy relationship, to talk about things and to share and to like help each other carry the burdens that you carry, because, you know, a shared burden is half the burden, half the load. That's been great for us, just to be able to communicate. There are so many common threads in, if you look at your, you know, even if you're in fields that are so far apart. I mean, I often say education and police work, you're a detective, you're a counselor, there are so many things that are connected roles, and so many roles that you play, but as far as supporting your spouse or your partner or your friend who's in law enforcement, to be there, to listen, to, you know, work hard, play hard. I know there's a lot of that, to take those moments to unwind and, you know, put some stuff to the side, but also process through it if you need to. I mean, I could tell, and as he said, I saw him through the career where things were like calloused, like he said, like it didn't matter. I knew it did. I knew he cared. I know his heart, but that's how he had to survive to get through it. And I still would say, tell me about it. I wanted to hear the stories. I wanted to know what was going on. And when he went on those SWAT call-outs, those QRT call-outs especially, you know, you never know if anybody's coming home to you, whether they're a police officer, whether they're military, I mean, things could happen. So to be present and appreciate right now. I always say you can't worry about things too much, but none of us are guaranteed we're going to finish the day. So the people who are in your circle right now, you are the most important people in my world right now, because we are here in this moment, and nobody's guaranteed when we walk out that door what will happen. So I think, you know, living that way, but appreciating it, not fearing what may happen, but just appreciating the present moment. That's what I've always tried to do, you know, in my life and in our relationship. So
how do you think, like, if you could put that in like somebody who's just getting into law enforcement, married, like what's the first thing you would tell them as the spouse? Like how do they shape their mind around that? Like like simple, you know, because communicating for any couple is hard. Like let's just, it is what it is, right? How would you shape that for a spouse in like a way that would make sense in the early days?
To listen and to be honest. So communicating isn't just about expressing, it's about receiving. Like listen, pay attention, pay attention, know the person's tells, know their mood and their affect and when something's bothering them. Right, just pay attention and listen.
I think one of the big things too is for her and I, we met a little bit later in life, and she already had her career and I already had my career. So we met, and she came in to understand, and as she learned me, she knew what my job was all about. And so when we got married, she already knew the things I had to do, the hours I worked, the calls that were, that had to happen or that you had to go on. And that makes it easier if you're new and you just decide that you meet somebody, and say for instance you have been for the better part of your life, you've been a drywaller, okay? You owned your own drywall business and you've been doing that, and all of a sudden you decide you want to want to get in law enforcement. That is a completely different animal for your spouse to understand. Like,
Oh yeah.
Because you're working during the day, you're home every night, you're there, and when you get into law enforcement, you're not. So I think it's definitely more difficult for somebody who has not been in law enforcement and already has a significant other in their life. It's a little bit harder for that person to understand you're not going to be home for Christmas. You're not going to be there for your kid's recital, the baseball game, whatever the case might be. If you've already involved in it, they come into the relationship knowing, oh, this is what it is, and you've been doing this for a long time, and I have to get used to what you're doing. So that's hard for a new relationship.
So what would be the advice you'd give then to maybe the patrolman or whoever, of being able to explain to their, like, being able to have that communication?
I think the biggest thing was they have to, the spouse that is in law enforcement has to make sure they let their significant other know what the job entails, what it's all about ahead of time. Let them know that, I can't guarantee that I'm coming home at the end of my 8-hour shift, my 10-hour shift. I might have to stay. Something might happen. There might be overtime. I may have no choice. There might be mandatory things that have to go on. Let them know ahead of time. And then the spouse has to understand too, I need to learn a little bit about this job that my husband or my wife is doing, because I can't let them go and do what they're doing and have no knowledge of it and then come home and get mad at them because they're upset about something, or they had a super long day or had to work extra, whatever the case might be. And it's a give and take kind of a thing. But I would say to make sure that you learn the job that the person is doing, and the person that's in law enforcement or military, whatever it might be, let your spouse know, hey, this is what it is. And before we get into this, I want you to know straight up what could potentially happen and what happens on a daily basis in my job. But I think it'll help them more than just not talking about it and coming in cold turkey and trying to find out, ooh, this is not what I thought when I was going to marry this cop.
Right.
I didn't think it was going to be like this. They have to know ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's important. I agree with that. So I want to shift gears a little bit here. We didn't get to cover your EDC, so I want to cover your EDC,
Okay.
and then I want to get into a little bit of the training you think that's helped you from being police officer to being more of a civilian role now, and what you think people need to know. So,
Right. So typically, now I'm a bigger guy, and have a little bit more around the midsection. So
you wake up sexy as hell.
yeah, yeah. But so I, for carrying, I always carry a Benchmade bug out knife with me.
Do you have it with you?
I do.
Yeah, let's show it. Come on. We got the gun mat.
So I've had this for a little while.
Nice.
I like it. It serves a lot of purposes. So I enjoy it and enjoy carrying it. It's easy to use. Just flip open, flip shut. So I carry that with me all the time. As far as a weapon, depends on the time of the year.
Very true.
I look at, you have to look at, especially when you're a bigger guy, you have to look at concealability and comfortability. So in the summertime, I'm a shorts, tank top, flip-flops. So it's a little harder to conceal a weapon. So sometimes, like in the summertime, I may have either a little 380 auto or a car 9mm that I carry, a slim single stack. And then when it's a little more colder weather and I can bulk up a little bit and have a sweater, jacket, whatever the case might be, I typically carry a Glock 23, 40 caliber. And I also always have a mass trauma kit in my truck that includes things like pressure dressings, stop bleed powder, a couple of tourniquets, scissors, regular, anything like that that I can use in any situation. If I come up on a traffic accident, somebody needs help. If something happens to a loved one, I can be there to help, have them, to help them. Pass it on to people. I tell the people I work with now that, I have a gray Dodge Ram that sits out in the parking lot every day. If something bad happens in this building, I'm going to be the person going to the bad stuff happening, no matter what. So if you need, break the window in my truck, center console, grab that kid out, bring it in and try to help somebody, because you may be helping me.
Right.
In the long run. So, that's pretty much it for me. I always have my cell phone with me. I can't, go anywhere without it. Carry two-way radios at work, especially. It's how we communicate with each other. And, law enforcement was such an extensive period in my life, from the time I was 24 years old until I was 50,
Yeah.
give or take. Actually more than that. I've been through a lot of training. I've been through situational trainings with our own agency, on the county level, on a state level. I've got to go to federal trainings for different things. And, all that has helped build not just the person I am, but it's helped me to understand situationally what's going on. We always pay, she's learned it too. We go to a movie theater, a restaurant, whatever, we always sit where we can see exits. We pay attention. She won't walk into a building or she won't see where there's a fire extinguisher, an AED. She pays attention to all that. So we always know where that kind of stuff is whenever we go anywhere. And we sit so we can see entrances and exits and pay attention to who's coming in, who's coming out. If something's out of place, if it's August in Myrtle Beach and it's 104 degrees and somebody comes walking with a long trench coat on and a tassel cap, something might not be,
something might not be right.
Pay attention to that person.
Yeah.
So, and in my current role as a safety manager for the transportation company, I deal primarily with our accident investigations that we're involved in, insurance claims, lawyers, lawsuits. I deal with all of our camera systems, and I work pretty closely with law enforcement because cameras on our buses and cameras on our buildings, either in Conway, Myrtle Beach, or Georgetown, where we have our hubs, there's a lot of stuff that transpires that happens that our cameras catch. So I'm always making video of thefts or accidents or this and that happen. And all my training in law enforcement, and I actually was an accident investigator and a reconstructionist for part of my career. So I understand accidents. I understand how they work. I understand the kinesthetics of them, and it helps me and it helps our insurance companies too. Because when I talk to them about things, they're like, "Whoa, we didn't think about it that way." They're just used to like, here's the claim, we're either going to pay it or we're not going to pay it. But I make sure they have video from every angle that I can from my buses. I get them still photographs. I give them all the reports. My reports are concise. I make my drivers do concise reports, and it helps law enforcement. It helps the insurance companies, and so I wouldn't be able to do the job I do now efficiently as I do if it wouldn't have been for my law enforcement career. Absolutely couldn't do it the same way.
So that definitely shows that like law enforcement does translate into other things, which I think a lot of people don't realize.
It does. And, I went to college to be a school teacher. I have a degree in education.
How the tables have turned.
Yeah. And I did it for 1 year and I just didn't like it. I was young. I was only 22 years old and I was teaching in high school. The kids were only a couple years younger than me. And I had no control, the classroom. And I was like, I can't come here every day. I really didn't like it. And then I, somehow transpired and got into, the security, and then the sheriff's office is my first real law enforcement job, and then on to the police work. So, but yeah, it has given me more and helped me more in life and in life situations than college ever did.
Oh yeah, 100%.
College was fun, and I had a good time. I met people from all around the world, and I will say that it helped me expand my view of different people. I can't say that it helped me to be the person I am today, for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Law enforcement did that.
Yeah, I think law enforcement for me is really what shaped a lot of the experiences I've had into a better mold of who I am. So understandable, for sure.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So what training do you think you've had that civilians maybe lack and should get?
Well, obviously there are some trainings they're not going to be able to get on the civilian level, but I think it's really important for folks to understand and know firearms. If you are going to have one, if you're going to own one, it is important to know the workings of them. It's important to understand the mechanisms of it, the dangers. We all know that a gun laying on a table or sitting is not going to hurt anybody.
Nope.
It's the person behind it that can hurt somebody either intentionally, if need be, or unintentionally by being careless. You have to have training. You need to go to somebody like yourself that can teach basic knowledge, basic from weapon retention to how to hold the firearm, to how to get your sight picture, and learn even how to carry, and make sure that
That's
no matter,
a whole nother animal.
yeah, people, people carry a gun. They can carry a gun, and they could, oh, it's cool to have an ankle holster, and they couldn't get it out of their off their ankle for a half an hour if they had. They'd be fighting to bend over to get it. You have to be able to learn how to do all those things. So it's important for anybody to take firearms training seriously, even physical training and ground fighting. To be able to learn to defend yourself or somebody else, I think is important too. And that's why taking classes and being able to do things like with somebody like yourself is really important, for people in the general public. I think it would benefit them, even if they just keep a gun in a closet on a shelf and they never plan on touching it, someday it's going to get touched. So they need to know everything about it, and they need to learn how to handle them properly. It always bothered me when I hear about anybody, and I'm not going to pick on females, but I'm going to say, oh yeah, I carry a gun. Where is it? Well, let me get it. And they're in this big bag, and they're digging through their
Floating
purse,
around in there,
and they're pulling out stuff, trying to get it out. Well, that's not going to do you any good if you need it in a hurry. And you could reach for the wrong thing. You could be reaching for a pack of gum and get your finger in a trigger, and there's a mistake made.
Yep.
And that only takes one mistake. Yeah. So I think firearms training, firearms retention, firearms handling, how you're going to conceal it or how you're going to holster it. People need to learn all those things. And if they don't, they probably shouldn't have a weapon.
I agree with that 100%.
And I think preparedness too is the other, when we first moved to Myrtle Beach and had our first hurricane, it was everybody had to prepare for the hurricane. You should be prepared right now when there isn't a hurricane, right. When it's not hurricane season. Be prepared always. And a lot of people lack that. We tend to react and panic. And people, we see it all the time. We saw it during COVID with people buying toilet paper. And anytime, living in Pennsylvania, as soon as there was snow in the forecast, everybody was buying milk and bread and all the things. Is that what you really need?
Finally going to buy rock salt while it's snowing.
What do you really need? But being prepared, because if you've ever had any kind of an emergency, whether it's, somebody gets cut and you need to go quickly, you need stitches. So where are the clothes you can throw on your body in a moment? Where are the things that you can grab in a moment? Where do you keep your car keys? Where do you keep your things on a regular basis? Just common, easy things like that everybody should kind of live by. So it's automatic, so it's muscle memory, so it's routine.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into somebody else's podcast on prepping, but it's just basic things you need, and people don't think about it. If you have to get out in a hurry, what are the simple things you're going to need to take with you that you have to get a hold of? You should be able to access them quickly.
Right.
And that would be anything from important documents, medications, weapons that you don't want to leave behind, cash. Because if you lose power, if you don't have power for weeks on end in an area, how are you going to get money from a bank or from an ATM machine, right. or you can't. So you have to have some cash on hand to be able to purchase things and to get gasoline for your vehicle and whatnot. So, but those things are all important to learn. Like she said, be prepared ahead of time. You can't prepare for something when it's happening.
No.
And even when you do, you could be the most prepared person, and you're always going to come across a situation where I didn't have that. Next time,
yeah, shit.
We always learn. It's evolving process, and from your law enforcement career, if there was an event that happened, you had an after-action plan or after-action breakdown. You're like, we could have done this better. We could have done this better. Next time, we're gonna do it this way. Then the next time it happens, something else gets thrown in there. Yeah. Something else is thrown into it, and you're like, we didn't prepare for this. So it's always a constant evolving thing. But the more you can prepare yourself and be ready, the better off you're going to be for you and your family. And you got to think about it. Who's number one? We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our love. There's a reason why they tell you to put your own oxygen mask on an airplane before you help somebody else. Because if you don't and you pass out, you're not going to be able to help anybody else.
Right.
So we have to be prepared ahead of time so that we can help ourselves, our loved ones, and then subsequently we can help other people as needed.
Right.
So I think that's important.
Do you think you've ran into any situations where having that training has been beneficial as a civilian?
Well, there's been tons of times where, I shouldn't say tons of times, but you come across like an accident on an interstate.
Yeah.
Even her, she came across an accident on the Pennsylvania Turnpike one time and got out, and she had things in the car to help the people, the victims, So that's each individual's preference. You'll see a lot of people just drive on by and they're not getting involved in it, but we all have to help each other. So there's lots of instances where even just watching somebody, even if nothing happens out of it, if you see that person that doesn't seem like they fit into this particular picture,
Right.
just watching them, keeping your eye on them to make sure they don't do something to hurt somebody else or to hurt you. And if they just turn around and end up leaving, okay, so nothing happened. But that happens a lot. We always watch people, and she knows if she goes to a store or something and she comes out of the store like late at night when they're getting ready to close and there's only 2 cars in the parking lot and hers is one and there's somebody else right beside her, don't go get in your car. Let's, go back inside or call somebody, because why is that person right there with
Yeah.
a million parking spots? So there's always things like that help you. But I think that comes from, I don't think the average person is going to think about that. Some will. I don't think a lot will, unless you've been trained and had training. And, I'm big into situational awareness, and I'm also big into active shooter training. I do active shooter training for other transit agencies across the state of South Carolina, for my own people. Every time somebody new gets hired, we take them through an orientation. And situational awareness and active shooting situations are 2 of the things that I teach during our orientation program. And I think that's important for people too. A lot of people aren't aware of their surroundings. They
No.
just go about their day like nothing could ever happen, and lo and behold, something's going down right beside them, and they don't have a clue about it.
Right.
And you never know when you're going to become embroiled in that situation. So being situationally aware of what is going on around you, I think, is important for every person,
Oh,
no matter what
100%.
you do.
Yeah, 100%. Because there's plenty of videos on the internet where it's like, oh, I don't have to be aware because my husband's the aware one, and TikTok and whatever it is, where it's like she's eating hot Cheetos in the car, he's eating hot Cheetos, and other person's watching what's going on. It's like, this is exactly what you don't want.
She's probably actually more aware of what's going on than I am.
Interesting.
She is very astute with paying attention to things that are going on.
I picked up on that because I've seen her nod her head when you say certain things and make certain gestures, and I'm like, she has every idea what's happening right now.
And it's good to have a partner like that.
No, I think
Sometimes we argue about who sits where, but I'm like, well, if he
typically carries.
he does.
Yeah.
But I always want to sit. I always like to sit where I can see, and we both can't sit, on the same side of a booth. That would look silly, but
it would look silly.
if we go out to eat, so I usually let him sit. But I'm always paying attention. Getting into my vehicle, I always look in the back seat. It's ingrained in me, and I don't know, and a lot of the things that we've talked about and the trainings that he's gone through and experiences that he's had, that he shared with me, makes me even more aware. But
So you didn't naturally have all this beforehand?
I had a lot of it instinctually. I think that's just,
Something that was hardwired?
yeah.
Do you think a lot of people have that?
I do.
Yeah.
I think people need to pay attention more to their instincts, pay attention more to their gut. Like that whole, you get into an elevator and something doesn't feel right, get off the elevator. If you follow that gut feeling, that's there for a reason. And I say that with kids. And sometimes it's decision making, follow your gut. No, something's not right, it doesn't feel right. That's your intuition, that's your protection.
Lizard brain going.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen to it.
I've told people throughout my whole career, especially, when you're a kid and you're about to do something wrong and you get those butterflies in your stomach and you're like, should I do this or shouldn't I do it? Sometimes we go ahead and we do it anyway, and then we get in trouble for it. But even as an adult, if you are going to do something or be involved in a situation, you start getting those butterflies, you should think about it or whatever that situation is before you step into it or before you get involved, because it's telling you something.
Yeah.
And it's usually telling you to stay the heck away or don't do it or don't get involved. If people just would believe those butterflies and listen to them, there'd be a lot less, bad things that happen.
Wow, a lot less dumb shit.
So
Call it what it is.
It is, yeah.
So what do you think the best takeaway for both of you from, his career and your career, being able to interchange that and marry that. What do you think the best takeaways were and the worst takeaways?
So I think for me, just seeing how she dealt with people, how she deals with families, parents, the kids themselves, and a lot of these kids, some of them live with their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, and to be able to deal with those situations that come up, and the things that she has to deal with as an educator and as an administrator at a school, it's not just sitting down and taking tests and and giving a kid a lesson plan for something. There's a lot more that goes to it. And for me, I learned from her how to appreciate some of the things that other people are going through more, and especially from younger people. You know, it's hard for them. The world is a hard place, and it's exceptionally hard for young people. So the way they interact and the way they talk and the way they treat the younger generation means a lot. And if you don't care about kids, you shouldn't be in education.
No.
If you don't care about people, you shouldn't be in law enforcement. If you think that you're gonna become a police officer and just be like arresting people every day and taking them to jail, and that's all your job is from the time you start to the time you end, you're sorely mistaken, because it's a very minute part of your job.
Have fun report writing.
I think that I spent a lot of time going to those calls where somebody called because the 2-year-old neighbor kid ran his tricycle through their grass and they want something done about it. And you have to work that out. You have to work out that situation with those neighbors. And, she's great at that with the things that happen in the school district. So I've taken that from her. And she's helped me to understand that, every situation and every child is a little bit different. They have to follow the same guidelines at school, but when they get home, their lives are completely different and they're all over the place. Some of them, school's the only safe place they have. And so when they're there, and they can't be with them 24/7. So during that 7 or 8 hours kids are at school, they do their best to try to help them, but the rest of the day, they're out with the world that they're in. So she's taught me that. I never thought of that way when it came to school kids. I thought you go to school, you do what you're supposed to do, you graduate, you get out.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it than that. So that's what I've taken from her.
We've said the word safe and safety over and over and over. I remember my mother always said, wear your seatbelt. Wear your seatbelt. Whenever one of us would leave the house, there were five kids, to get in the car. I always wore my seatbelt, but she needed to say it. I think she just needed to say it, wear your seatbelt, even though she knew I'd never pulled out of the driveway without my seatbelt on. We always said, be safe. And I remember saying that, with him going to work every day. We still say it. It's still, be safe is kind of part of our message. It was the message that, carried through from my mother to being married to Jay to, and we still do it. That's so important. Safety is like the number one. And it's not, as I said in the beginning, it's not just physical safety, it's emotional safety. They go hand in hand. You need both. You need to have both in a relationship, in a career, whatever it is. In his, we joke about, the expression, you can get hit by a bus tomorrow, and now he says he seriously has a greater chance of getting hit by a bus.
You probably have the best chance.
Right. But yeah, to be safe.
Make sure you play the lotto.
Is important. It's a takeaway and a give for both of our careers, and also grabbing the moments. That's kind of my little catchphrase that I say all the time in posts on Facebook and in talking to people, like grabbing the moments. And when we talked about, you asked earlier about being married to someone in law enforcement. You may have to work Christmas Day. You may have to work, New Year's Eve. You may have to. Those are just dates on the calendar. Grab the moments when you can grab the moments, and enjoy those moments. Because and when we're all going through stuff, we all go through stuff. Everybody does in every career. The police officer that shows up at your house on a call and they are your salvation, they're dealing with stuff too. The educator, the teacher, the administrator, whoever it is, we carry a whole bunch of stuff in. But those things are temporary too. Like I often say, the good times are fleeting, but so are the bad times. Like, you'll get through them. You just got to hold on through them and grab the moments when you can. And sometimes the mundane and the boring and the everyday laundry and stuff that's on repeat, appreciate that stuff, because that holds it all together. That ties it all together. And you need to do that in a, whatever relationship you're in, whatever, people in your family do. But in law enforcement, you need that even more because it's a hard career, and it's very draining. So
That's the best I've ever heard that said. Seriously, like that's, I think that should be the title for today is grab the moment. Because that's, I've never heard it put that way, but it like really makes a lot of sense. So I love that.
That's been her tagline since the day I met her. Is
Since she thought you were stuck up.
grab them. Yeah. Yeah.
You had to grab that moment.
But you know, we have careers.
Yeah.
A job is a job, a career is a career. If you're going to be in a career, you better do the best that you can to make your career fulfilled for yourself, but for the other people that you're helping and that you're working for. You know, you've heard a million times, I pay your salary. I'm a tax-paying citizen. You do.
Yes.
And I'm here to try to do the best I can for you. I'm trying to help you. You just got to let me figure it out. Let me help you figure it out. I can't figure everything out, but let me try to take some advice. You know, we've been around the sun a few times, you
Right.
and I, her. So we've been around the sun a few times, and we have advice to give, and we can help people. So having a career, whether it's in education or law enforcement, or if you're, you know, in the medical profession, whatever it is, do the best job you can for the people that you're working for, do the best job you can for yourself, and do the best job you can for your employer. My father always told me, no matter what job you do it the best you can every single day, and your paycheck is your reward. Don't expect pats on the back or medals or this or that. He said, if you do your job the best you can, and you take care and do the things you need to do for your employer and for yourself, it'll pay dividends. I'm living proof that no matter what you do, I always try to do the best job I can, no matter what I did. From a gas station attendant at 16 years old, all the way up to what I'm doing now. I do the best job I can every day for somebody, and it's always paid off, you know, for me. So
Absolutely.
I believe that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that gets lost on a lot of the younger people now too. Well, I think that's about time. We good on time? Yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. I really like that though, the grab the moment thing. That's, nobody's ever said that to me. So that's, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.